Welcome to the Nano podcast. I'm your host, Will Tjernlund, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of nano-cap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of nano-cap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. In this week's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Brent Lucas, CEO of Envoy Medical, stock ticker COCH. Envoy Medical is a leader in hearing health and wants to help navigate the full spectrum of hearing loss treatment options for their patients. Brent, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Will. Thanks for having me.
So I love to kind of start with people's LinkedIn and kind of where they started and how they got to now. You have a very interesting journey because you went to law school and then you became a marketing associate and then you became the senior legal counsel / general counsel for the company. And usually you don't go from general counsel to CEO. So can you tell me just a little bit about just like how long you've been with the company, what your journey is like to basically lead to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So the journey is definitely a non-traditional journey for an executive, but it's one that I think is kind of beneficial for Envoy and for myself because I've been through pretty much every role at the company at this point except for engineering. So I'm not an engineer. Don't claim to be one. We have plenty of good people that do that, but the story goes back to 1995 when I was actually in middle school or high school, and my father was one of the first investors in what was then Envoy Medical. So my father had built or helped build a company called R&D Systems that became Techne, that is now Biotechne, ticker TECH. And so that company had a great journey, and he was able to make some money. And as he did, he then looked to invest in other companies around the Minnesota area. And so he came across this company, Envoy Medical, and became enamored with it and started to invest. And that happened in 1995. My joke is, my wife doesn't like this joke very much, but other people do, so I'll tell it. The joke is I was supposed to have a trust fund and decide how I was going to blow all my money, what kind of drug problem I was going to have, what kind of yacht I was going to live on. But things didn't work out that way, as they very often do not. So by the time I was looking to start my career in about 2007, I was in law school, knew I didn't want to be a lawyer, but knew I wanted to be in business and in the healthcare space. So I offered to intern for Envoy Medical, which had then turned into Envoy Medical, name change, and started as a marketing associate while I was in law school. And then got a little bit more involved on various projects, helped them start up a nonprofit arm that was going to be related to the company for a while. Passed the bar, and then became general counsel. They didn't have a legal person in the company, so I said, "Hey, I'm new to this, but I spent a lot of time learning about healthcare law. Let me and regulatory law. Let me help as general counsel." Did that for a little bit, and then I left the company. Actually, voluntarily resigned. I had a difference of opinion with the executive management at the time, felt like they were on the wrong path and didn't want to be part of that journey anymore. So I resigned, let the board know why I was resigning. And they parted ways with that management team about a year later and then asked me to come back. Again, came back as a lawyer. Now, I hated being a lawyer. I still hate being a lawyer. So I quickly said to the CEO at the time, I'm not really feeling this lawyer thing anymore. Let me get in the field and understand what's really going on with the business. So I gave up my sort of executive job, my C-suite job, if you will, and went into the field as a business development guy, basically carrying a bag and talking to everybody and anybody that I could talk to. And then from there, slowly went from business development manager, and we ran into some interesting times in 2015 and became the CEO around that time when we pivoted from our first product to the Acclaim. So I've been the CEO since 2015.
So it's great you got all this experience from kind of top to bottom in the company, but does it ever come back to kind of bite you in the butt that people are asking you for like the Facebook password or where a certain legal document is, since you're the person who actually knows where every single body's buried?
Yeah, that is hilarious because it's very true. I do have the passwords for pretty much everything we have. It's a startup company is an interesting existence, right? I don't know if this is on video, but it almost looks like I'm in a closet because I have this windowless office right next to our clean room. It's not shiny and fancy like you would see other CEOs living. But I would have it no other way because everything within this company I know about. I know why we're doing things. I know why we should be doing things. I know our customers, all the doctors and audiologists that are worth knowing. I know those people. And if I had not gone through that journey, I think I would be in a bad spot. And not to throw stones at some of my competitors in the cochlear implant space, but there's a couple of cochlear implant companies who have new executives that have no hearing experience. They're from completely outside the hearing industry, and I think it's a very hard industry to just jump into unless you know it. So it's been an up and down history for the last 20 years, but I'm glad we did it because now I think we're in a very, very good position to really take off and grow this company.
So we spoke a little bit before we started recording, but how much do you think like just your like Minnesota Twin Cities background with all the biotech always going on there, different medical device companies, that plus just like your Midwestern, learn everything, do it all, working with your hands, like you said, going to be a business development person. How much do you see the combination of that like as your competitive advantage?
I think being part of what we call Medical Alley here in Minnesota, so we belong to Medical Alley, but I also think it is, bigger than that organization. We are really the Silicon Valley of medical device development, manufacturing. It's been incredibly important. We are able to go if we need to go find a good electrical engineer with implantable medical device experience. Well, guess what? We can find them. They're around here. If we were in the middle of Atlanta, for example, it would be very difficult for us to find that. The company St. Croix Medical was founded in part by former Medtronic executives and engineers. So a lot of our early processes and procedures came from an established medical device company, which allowed us to build a very strong core, a very strong foundation that I think we'll be able to build upon. Because when you look at a lot of other medical device startup companies, and one of the reasons that people get a little nervous around medical device startup companies is there's so many places to make mistakes in manufacturing, quality systems, regulatory compliance. Well, that's sort of built into our DNA already because of who we came from and then also who we hire. So we're not some tech company on the West Coast trying to make, dipping our toe into the water, if you will, with medical devices. It's in our DNA. That's who we are, and I think that is going to allow us to greatly grow quickly and with minimizing mistakes.
Yeah, I think of you trying to get some engineers from San Francisco who want to switch jobs every 12 to 18 months and want some crazy salary and this and that. And I just think of the people who I know, yeah, who work the type of Medtronic type people where it's like, no, they're willing to be there for the next 30 years. And like
Right.
they're really into this and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They have all the experience and everything. So no, definitely must be just way, way sweeter hiring in the Twin Cities area for sure. So I gave you a brief intro at the beginning, but in your own words, what is Envoy Medical? What do you all do? When did you all become public? And was it always the same idea with a kind of cochlear implant type product, or did the product switch throughout the years? Tell me just a little bit about what is Envoy Medical and the history of it.
Envoy Medical is a hearing healthcare company. So we're focused on providing hearing solutions to people that need something more than a hearing aid. So hearing aids are great technologies, and we're not here to say anything other than they are great technologies, but they don't work for everyone. Hearing loss is a massive market. About 40 million people in the United States have some form of significant hearing loss. But it's a very underpenetrated, underaddressed market because not everybody feels like they want to wear an external hearing aid or an external cochlear implant. So the company was founded around this idea actually by a hearing instrument salesperson. So this is a person in the 70s actually who came up with the idea of, the best way to pick up sound is not a microphone, it's your ear. The human brain is built around hearing through the ear. Why don't we hear through the ear instead of a microphone? Plus, if you remember grandparents or great grandparents, for you look like a very young gentleman. So this might be, great grandparents kind of generation where they had these old beige gummy things in the side of your ear. And if you went to hug grandma, she would start squealing because there would be feedback. Those hearing aids came with a lot of very obvious problems. And so this person came up with the idea of using the ear to pick up sound. And that is really the foundational idea behind Envoy Medical, is use the ear to pick up sound, not a microphone. So we have two products. The first product, the Esteem, was built around this idea and has a sensor technology that picks up the vibrations, the sound vibrations off your incus. So we're all familiar with the outer ear, the big pinna on the side of our heads, and then the ear canal. We also probably all know about our eardrum because you've heard it talked about. But what you probably don't know is after your eardrum, you have these three tiny ossicles or hearing bones that then bring the sound vibrations to your cochlea, and the cochlea then brings the information or sends the information to your brain. That's how you hear. So what we do is we pick up the vibrations off of that middle bone, that middle hearing bone, and that's what we use to then process the sound. So in a way, you can think about it very simply as we are using the ear as our version of the microphone. So we don't have an external microphone, and that or an implanted microphone, and that differentiates us from every single hearing company on the planet right now. Every other hearing company uses a microphone, whether it's on the outside of your head or implanted underneath your skin. They use a microphone. We believe that microphones have inherent limitations, and so we don't use those. So our first product, the Esteem, is a middle ear implant, was the first of its kind to go down the regulatory pathway. We received FDA approval in 2010. Unfortunately, we had not laid the groundwork for reimbursement. So that product was not a reimbursed product, which is incredibly difficult for an implantable medical device. We tried to do some things, a lot of direct-to-consumer marketing approaches at that point. It just didn't really catch on because there was no insurance reimbursement. So in 2015, part of me becoming CEO was we pivoted to a cochlear implant, which is what we're focused on now, and that is the Acclaim device. And that device is in 3 patients in an early feasibility study right now at Mayo Clinic, and we are hoping to start our bigger pivotal study by the end of the year. And we think that product's going to absolutely disrupt our existing players in the market space. So right now there's 3 big cochlear implant companies, one in Australia called Cochlear, and we've been very open and honest about our desire to disrupt them of their market leadership. I mean, our ticker symbol is COCH in part because we're trying to let the world know we're here to play in the cochlear implant space. And I think we're in a very good position to be one of the, at least one of the top 2 cochlear implant companies in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I got to give you credit where credit's due with the awesome stock ticker. It's very slick. But okay, so between the 2 products, was there much change that needed to be done, or did you have to kind of like pseudo start from scratch so that you had to go through all the processes so that insurance would approve it the second time through, or is the product actually that much different?
It is a different product for everything except for the sensor. So the only thing that's shared between the 2 devices is our sensor technology. So we use the ear to pick up sound through our sensor with both devices. Outside of that, there are different clinical indications. So the Esteem, which is the middle ear implant, that's for more moderate, severe sensorineural hearing loss. And then, so you can have better hearing with that device, and it delivers a mechanical energy to your cochlea. The Acclaim is a cochlear implant, so by definition, it delivers electrical stimulation to your cochlea, and it's also for people who are profoundly hard of hearing, so people who are severe to profound hearing loss, which, in our sort of regular parlance, we call that they're deaf, right? So cochlear implants are for a more significant level of hearing loss. So there was quite a bit of work that had to go in to taking our sensor and melding it with a cochlear implant. And that's what we had essentially been up to since 2015 to about 2022 before we did our first human implant. So we now have two products, both relying on the sensor technology, both fully implanted, both unique in their own right because they do not use a microphone. And now we are starting to expand to cover a larger portion of the hearing loss population. Now, the cochlear implant, the Acclaim, probably should have been our first product because that product is covered by insurance. It would have been covered by insurance 10 years ago because cochlear implants are coverable technologies. Then we could have worked our way into the middle ear space and probably built a better business. So we did that backwards. The good news for the folks of this podcast, and we made the mistakes 10 years ago, so you don't have to suffer through those now. And now we're in a very good position. Learned a lot of lessons over 30 years that we can take it forward and really take advantage of the marketplace. And the other thing I would point to is, the Esteem doesn't have insurance now, but we are working on a couple of different ways to try to get insurance coverage for that product. If that were to happen, it would be a gigantic cherry on the top of this business. Right now, we're building the business around the cochlear implant, around the Acclaim, and the Esteem is there, but it's not something we're really focused on because of that insurance issue. If we get a crack in that dam, things change very, very quickly.
So I got a dumb question, I'm sure, but how do you charge it?
So not a dumb question. The first product, the Esteem, is what's called a primary cell battery. So it's just a battery like an old pacemaker where you would replace it every 5 to 6 years. The cochlear implant has a battery pack in the chest. So if you can think about the Inspire, the sleep apnea device, or certain deep brain stimulation devices, battery packs in the chest are relatively common for medical devices. And so our battery pack is in the chest, and you will charge it by holding a coil over your chest, just as you would charge your phone at night. So you put your phone on the pad at night, you would basically put a coil over your battery, and it will charge through inductive telemetry, essentially. And that will happen for our cochlear implant. That happens about every 4 to 5 days right now with the first 3 patients that were implanted. And we hope to get that up to about a week, which again is a huge differentiator between us and our competitors because our competitors have a battery in the head for their fully implanted device. And we think that's a mistake because you're going to have a smaller battery up there that's going to have to require more frequent charging. And it's just going to be a pain, I believe, on the patient's experience.
Yeah, I'm even forward thinking of especially with the Android phones, they can wirelessly charge off each other. And so if you just put your phone on your chest and charge yourself up off your phone battery, that'd just be one more easier thing as you're trying to take a nap throughout the day or something.
Right. Yeah, no, there's a lot of interesting things to do with battery technology. We look forward to that changing. We don't make our own batteries. We have other people that are far more sophisticated to do that. But as battery technology changes, there's things like body energy harvesting, there's, motion energy harvesting. There's a lot of pretty interesting things that could come to the medical device space. Plus, you start to think about, grandfather's got a pacemaker, a sleep apnea device, a hearing device, and at a certain point, is there a way to have sort of a central power source for all of it? It gets pretty interesting pretty quickly.
No, you took the words out of my mouth. That was honestly kind of my next step as I see like Neuralink is working on blindness and you all can work with hearing loss. And then slowly but surely we are 50% robot.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting stuff. So you mentioned your competitors a little bit. So as they kind of zig and you zag, is just the main thing just getting awareness out there, or is it just getting you that FDA approval through and so you can actually like market your product, or kind of would you say like the big thing holding you back as of the next like 3 months?
So over the next 3 months, we plan to get closer to starting our pivotal study. Our pivotal study is going to be 56 patients at 7 or 8 sites in the United States. We believe it'll take about 18 months to complete. with enrollment and follow up, and then get FDA approval hopefully at the end of 2026 or beginning of 2027. In terms of what's holding us back, I don't think a whole lot is. Obviously, if I had, endless amounts of resources, I could build a bigger team and potentially we could move more quickly. But I would say one of Envoy's biggest benefits over the last 10 years has been the small team. So I'm the CEO. I work closely with our engineers. If there's something that comes up, they can walk into my office and we can talk about it and have a decision in 5 or 10 minutes. Versus you go to a bigger corporation that has a vested sales force, doing their own thing. They have sell only available product going on. They can't cannibalize their existing market. They have a lot of other things to worry about where we can move quickly. So we are moving about as fast as you can move for a fully implanted medical device, and I believe that's going to be our biggest benefit going forward in the short term because we can move quickly and we're agile. We also have a huge shareholder in Mr. Glenn Taylor, who owns the Timberwolves, is a very wealthy man in Minnesota. So capital is something that we've been able to access through him or other investors, now the public markets, in a way that we couldn't do before. And as we show traction, we can put more gasoline on the fire if need be. But so I don't really view that as our concern either. So I think, if you really wanted to take the shackles off of Envoy, that would be the change in insurance reimbursement for the first product. I mean, that would change the game very quickly. That would make our competitors very nervous very quickly. But in terms of the cochlear implant, we are just, I talk about the 20-mile march, which is, that famous story from Antarctica where the team that just does the work day in and day out, they do their 20 miles every single day. They're the ones that get to the South Pole. The other team that tries to mess around, trying to be too fancy, go too quick on certain days or take days off, that's the team that ended up dying down there. And so we try to do that where it's very much steady as she goes, do what we can and see where it all lands later on.
And so a question I ask a lot of the CEOs, since they do come from different backgrounds and such, is how do you handle like furthering education of you, even just knowing the day-to-days of running a publicly traded company on top of having to know about biology and how an ear works, plus knowing engineering jargon and such? Is it just something that you just picked up day after day doing that, whatever, 20 miles a day? Or was it something that you've had to say, okay, I got to take a small sabbatical and just deep dive into electrical engineering and the body just to know what everyone's talking about?
When it comes to electrical engineering, that's something where I'm aware that I'm not going to ever get to a point where I could be helpful to the group. So there I rely heavily on our engineering team and the trust that I have within that group. We also have some very good contractors and advisors that we help to come in and pressure test our engineers. So, one of the problems I saw with Envoy very early on in my when I was still just an intern, was there was a lot of groupthink going on with the executives, and everybody was kind of there to help each other out on the executive team, but really wasn't venturing out. And so one of the things that became very important for me when I became CEO is to rebuild our medical advisory board and also pull in advisors that can come pressure test our engineering team if they need to, or our clinical team, and then report back to me about, okay, no, they're on the right path, or no, this particular individual is wrong, you need to address that. So that's been something that's been very helpful. I listen to a lot of podcasts. If you were to talk to my wife or my two kids, they would tell you that I'm almost always have my AirPod in and I'm listening to something. Not that it's all good, right? There's a lot of bad stuff out there, but it's just a constant stream of things to think about and different perspectives. So, and then on the hearing side of things, I talk to everyone that is in the industry. I talk to audiologists, I talk to surgeons. Being the Minnesotan that I am, I have two ears and one mouth, and I use them in accordance, right? So I'm not somebody that's going to be out there talking at people. I really want people to talk to me, and I want to learn from those people. And then that allows me to absorb what I need to absorb and to put it into play. And frankly, I think, not to go on too much of a tangent, but frankly, I think that's why Silicon Valley has not yet succeeded in the healthcare space and in the medical device space, because they have more of that. We're just going to tell the world how it's going to be. It doesn't work like that in healthcare and medical device. And I think that's why Envoy is going to be in a much better position to take advantage of some of this than the Neuralinks of the world, who are trying to bring that sort of Silicon Valley approach to healthcare. God bless them, but it's happened a few times, and the failures are pretty spectacular.
Yeah, no, the Theranos and such comes to mind. So I'm with you.
Exactly. Yep.
So as I kind of wrap up here, what do the next 5 years look like for you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Do you have a new product coming out? Is it just pedal to the metal once you get the insurance approval? What does the next 5 years look like?
So for the Acclaim, the cochlear implant, it's pedal to the metal on the clinical trial. We believe we're the first. We believe we're in the leadership position when it comes to a fully implanted cochlear implant. So we're going to continue to try to maintain that leadership. So we're going to go forward with our Acclaim cochlear implant and hope to be first to market. And that's, and we'll be, if you follow us on the COCH news, you're going to see us talking about pivotal study getting approved, first patient implanted, all that sort of stuff will start to come out as we go through time over the next several months and years. On the Esteem side, we're going to focus on insurance coverage and getting that. Once we get some breaks with that, I think then, yes, we will look to make that a better product. Right now, it's been hard to invest in iterating that product because there's no insurance reimbursement. It's hard to convince your investors, hey, let's spend millions of dollars iterating this product, but there's no market for it because there's no reimbursement. So we will look there. And then as a general business, I think we are looking to build ourselves as an independent hearing business and hearing health business. And if you look at the global hearing health industry, it's mostly in Europe and Australia. And there's another private company here in Minnesota, Starkey, which is a hearing aid company. But outside of that, you don't have a lot of hearing industry within the United States. And I think there's a really good opportunity to build a hearing health business that could potentially grow into something quite substantial. And that's what, now that we've got our feet under us, that we're public, we have access to public capital, I'm pretty interested in seeing, how creative we can get in building this business.
Amazing. So as we wrap up, if people want to hear more about what you all are up to, / if they're looking to get cochlear installed, where should they go? Where can they find out more information?
Yeah, follow us. Our ticker, COCH. Follow us on whatever tool you use to follow stocks. My LinkedIn page, so Brent Lucas, my LinkedIn page. I tend to post things there relatively frequently. Envoy Medical, ENVOY. Medical is, social. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, or whatever it's called now, X. And then the other place is just our website. So envoymedical.com, ENVOY medical.com. Lots of good information on there about both of our products, about hearing loss in general. And if you want to learn more, you can find your way to contacting our folks through that website, and they'd be happy to talk at length about both products and why they're different from existing technologies and all sorts of things.
Sounds good. I will include all the links in the description. Thanks again, Brent. And for those still listening, please remember to review and subscribe. Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute therefore by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast Express disclaims all liability